We are a third generation owned family business. My grandfather, Herbert Bucky Kentile, started the business in '79. We employ between 15 and 20 locals. Those 5 are seasonal. We try to pay really well. Quarterly bonuses, retirement. Our foremen have new pickup trucks that they, that are basically their trucks. They bring to work every day. So we try to stay really competitive, and we really enjoy either pulling guys right out of high school and teaching them the way that we like to do things, or seeing really qualified guys around the Tri-Lakes and offering them an attractive package to have them come to work for us. And it's worked out really well. I'd say we got the best crew in probably the world.
Tell us about what you're doing here.
So this is a 1,600-foot power and communication trench that we're installing for a new home on the other side of the property. The qualified 60-year-old guys that are retiring right now are leaving a huge void in the trades. So I think there's a huge opportunity. I think the fastest way to, a 6-figure job right now is probably through the trades. The work is obviously very important, but you can't just focus on the work. You actually have to focus on the people. And if you start focusing on the people that you're hiring and assembling these crews, the work will kind of take care of itself because you've plugged the right people into those positions. And when we really got our head wrapped around that, our workload took off because we had the right guys in there. So then we realized, wow, this really works. Focus on the people.
If you could look 10 or 20 years from now, what do you see as the future of trades at the Adirondacks?
I think the trades will always be strong because we have a giant second home market here. I think it's an easy career path for someone coming out of school if they want 40 years worth of work. I think it'll be here. I also think there's a lot of upward mobility available, because if you focus on the skill and not the money, say you want to be a plumber, become the best plumber. Do your research in the trades magazines and online. Stay on top with all the cutting edge technology. If you do that, you can charge whatever you want to charge. You'll work on the biggest homes in the park. You'll become known for that. I would really encourage men and women to consider the trades and enjoy it. I mean, it's what we do for work it can be hard, it can be dirty, it can be tiring, but it can be a lot of fun.
I had trouble buying my first house. I had fairly good credit and everything. I just didn't have a lot of money for a down payment. I actually financed it through the old owner of the company. I drew up a land contract and he was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll buy your house for you. That's amazing. My bosses have done unbelievable things for me, for our company. Anything we ever needed, if we were in a bind, we'll take care of it. We'll figure it out. It's super hard to get discouraged coming to work here.
37 years in Tupper Lake and married to my wife Brittany, and I have 2 kids, Cooper and Zoe. And yeah, it's a great place to work. Mitchell and Cade both came right out of high school. It's great, it's like really rewarding teaching them something and bringing them out into the field and watching them comprehend it and just take it to the whole next level and learn it. Adam and Jay have our machines set up with Trimble, 2D grade control and stuff, and I feel like the younger generation catches on quicker than I did because I'm learning it as I go, and they just pick up on the technology and all that way faster than I did. So it's really cool to see all that.
We are a third.
Discussion, the past and future of jobs in the Adirondacks. I'm Tracy Ormsby, the publisher, and I'm really glad to have all of you here today. Thank you. Before we get into the event, I want to also thank our sponsors and supporters, the Adirondack Council, the Adirondack Foundation, and the Cloud Splitter Foundation, and the Wild Center for hosting us here today. Today's event is a culmination of a roughly 6-month series the Adirondack Explorer prioritized to learn more about the job challenges we often hear about in the Adirondacks, and then share that information with readers. It's of course tied to the struggle to bring and keep young people here. The series has been reported by the incomparable Tim Rowland, who's here today. Tim, stand up and wave. The series looks at the industrial age in the Adirondacks and the move to the prison and recreation economy after the 1970s, the pandemic and its impacts. Tim has written about entrepreneurial jobs, tech innovation, remote work, the Adirondack tradition of patching several different jobs together to make a living, which today is called gig workers, the trades. The agenda for today is to get an idea of the current state of jobs and a peek at the future from the Department of Labor. Then we'll have a panel discussion with what we're calling the workforce of the future. But we also want you, the audience, to be very involved today, to be a participant and throw out questions to the panel and to our experts here. So let me find out a little bit more about who's here. Who's here today because they know someone on the panel? Who's here today because you're someone with jobs to fill, but you're struggling to find workers? Who's someone looking for work? And who's someone who's here just because you're concerned about the future of the Adirondacks? And who's someone who's just looking for something to do this morning? The Adirondack Foundation has supported this series with the Generous Acts grant, as they do for so much of the important work here in the park. And they take on some of this work themselves. Bringing good jobs to the region is a focus for the foundation. Here to welcome you and talk a little bit about that work is Callie Brooks, President and CEO of the Adirondack Foundation.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm really delighted to be here today and see so many people who care about this critical issue. I want to start by thanking the Wild Center, great team, for hosting this and so many important conversations, and especially the Explorer for taking the deep dive into a new era of employment and jobs. Adirondack Foundation was pleased to support the series that beautifully profiles the economic reality of this remarkable region, how our close-knit rural communities and protected environment shape our way of life, fuel our economy, and contribute to the overall economic vitality. But it did not shy away from the significant challenges of the demographic trends and persistent poverty that has ripple effects on our livelihood, employment, education, health, and well-being. I also want to recognize Tim Rowland as an Adirondack treasure. He's a true storyteller, and we are really lucky to have him documenting these extraordinary times. So for 27 years, Adirondack Foundation has been engaged in this question about good jobs for the people who live here in our communities. We've been investing in building the basic building blocks to ensure economic vitality: housing, small business capital, childcare, quality education, workforce, and new to us, but just as important, is civic energy. As Tracy mentioned, each year, the Generous Acts Fund makes grants to towns and nonprofits We took 2% of our $100 million in assets and made local investments in loans to build houses, to capitalize small businesses, and to facilitate attainable transportation. Together with the New York State Department of Labor, we produced a Most Promising Jobs report for the North Country. There's a lot of copies here today, so I encourage you to take one. This report is designed to help local youth and their families as a valuable resource for future employment and career planning. And several of our donors with donor-advised funds are working with us to help create jobs that are promising and pay well in the tech and innovation space. This effort is being led by Svetlana Philipson, who's here today, and she'll talk a little bit more about the Adirondack Innovation Initiative. So all of this work and the Explorer's remarkable series is leading to a shift in Adirondack beliefs and assumptions, a change in the mindset where we are no longer victims of past industry losses, but proud participants in the 21st century economy. Together with so many of you in this room, and I'm seeing so many of our really great partners, we're working to empower our region to outpace other rural regions in this country, where more young residents stay or return, as many of us here did, and together with new residents, we are working with new ideas, new energies, and good jobs. So I'm really looking forward to hearing you guys this morning and working with many of you in the future as we really build economic vitality in this region. So now I have the great pleasure of introducing Christian Harris, a labor market analyst with the New York State Department of Labor. He is with the Research and Statistics Group, which is recognized as the premier source of labor market information in New York State. Mr. Harris is responsible for analysis of workforce and economic trends and holds a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Binghamton University and a master's in economics from the University of Michigan. He has been with the State Department of Labor for 20 years. So welcome, Christian.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Callie. Thank you, everyone. Really delighted to be here to inject some labor market information at the front end of our event today. What a great day, huh? Another good, wonderful day, and this venue is terrific. So I need to actually bring that out front and center. So my job really is I'm an economist with the state, focused on the labor market. So I dabble in all the regions throughout New York State. Our focus today is the North Country region. So many definitions are out there. Adirondack Foundation has their own catchment of what that means, the North Country means. So the data I pulled is from the Department of Labor and Economic Development. They align their idea based on commutation patterns largely, so where workers are going to work in the interrelationships between counties. So my first slide here is what we deemed, and this has long been before I began, as the North Country region there. So these 7 counties encompass the North Country region, and the data that you'll be seeing as I move forward here will relate to these 7 specific ones. My services and the services of my colleagues are a free service. We're tasked with validating survey information as far as employment and wage data and getting that information out in a meaningful way. That's our job. The federal government pays us such. So we are a resource for everyone in the community here, and I'll have contact information at the end. So I wanted to take a look at a few things. First and foremost are demographics. We know that demographics are a very important piece to the puzzle as far as the economy goes. And it's something that we need to be very aware of as we make our decisions here locally. So this is a long-term view of the total population in this North Country catchment that I described earlier. So obviously, I kind of stand back and let these sink in. We do have a couple items or a few items of note in here. First is that dramatic run-up from 2001 to about 2011, 2012. And that was largely focused in Jefferson County. more specifically Fort Drum. So as we know, terrain here was conducive to training for the conflicts going on in the Middle East. So we had a lot of young people coming into the North Country with a mission in focus, but were within our boundaries. And between them and the college crew that's quite nomadic, many come to the region for education and leave, we have a tremendous youthful resource there that I've constantly tried to tap, but we need to keep going at in order to educate them as to the opportunities in the community. So the more we engage with those sets, the better I think we'll be, more successful we'll be, at least getting the notion in their head that the North Country is a wonderful place to raise a family, to have a wonderful career. So I think that's a big takeaway from that portion. So we did have a long slide since then, unfortunately. Since that run-up, and then those conflicts have slowly, still out there, but not as far as the personnel goes, not at the level as we were back in the 2010, 2011. So the next item here that is obviously front and center, and I plopped a note on there, is our COVID-19 impact. So COVID-19, as we know, scrambled a lot of eggs. Essentially, it moved, fast forward a lot of things. As far as advances, as far as having to work, if able, remotely. So we've got a couple of things going in with that little bump related to COVID-19. One, the data. During that period of time was our decennial census, 2020. An issue with that, because of COVID and obviously greater concerns than filling out a form for the census, is our response rates were really low. So that gave us a little erroneous data in smaller, compact areas. So some of that might be going on in there as far as the blip up. We might see a bit of a smoothing in there, but not, I don't think, dramatic. The other piece is, and we talked about it in our earlier video, is the second home situations. So we had a lot of people wanting to leave urban areas, get space, were able to do that remotely in the North Country. So we were able to really show ourselves to the world in a more meaningful way. So we're able to have these individuals experience life here. Unfortunately, now we're seeing the gradual pullback. But I really think in the long term, I don't know that that's going to be sustainable for a lot of these larger companies because of the labor force demand. Demographics alone are going to color our labor market. And we have a lot of people moving into retirement and not a lot of individuals able to backfill those positions. Those people moving into retirement are still consumers. So they're still going to be pulling and needing goods. And so we're going to have to, the companies are going to have to really think about that and get talent however they can. It may be a hybrid type situation, or we may see a tug of war for the next 5 to 10 years here between employees and employers till we settle into a place. But that still is an opportunity for us. And I know it's something that the Adirondack Foundation is taking a look at, is these remote workers in our communities, and what is it that makes this place special to them, and how can we use that in a marketing piece outward to other individuals who would be willing to move to our community. Now, this particular source, Lightcast, does do population projections, kind of tame as far as it's looking at it from my eyes. They do see a gradual increase and then a flattening over time. This will change as we get more information year after year. So that's a look at our demographics briefly and quickly. Another piece we wanted to take a look at is our young workers. So this is, I laid out the New York State and its composition of population composition by age cohort. So that's, those numbers along the sides are the percent of total population. And kind of taking a look at it, you'll see first a bulging for the North Country in that 20 to 24 and even the 10 to 4 or the 15 to 19. And again, we're talking about Fort Drum and higher ed. So there's that young population here, one that we consider, one that we're hopeful will stay. But within the North Country, here for a period of time, omniscient, but hopefully we can tap that resource or at least educate that resource. So compared to the statewide and even the nation, we do see a larger percentage within that 15 to 24 age cohort. After that, we do see a bend in. So that's our concern is, these youth in that 15, largely 17 to about 22, 23, after they're done, they're leaving. So then we have our bend in. So we have a smaller percentage, and then we have a larger percentage at the top. So we're seeing some kind of a dumbbell type shape to our population composition. So we have a larger percentage of older and a larger percentage of younger, but we're missing, at least relative to the state and nation, that young worker set in between. And that's a concern. I think we all know that. This is just putting a graphic to what we know is out there. So if we did remove Fort Drum, especially if we moved to higher education, we would certainly be rounded more at the top and much thinner towards the bottom. So that's it for the population demographics. So from there, I want to move on to our jobs trend up in the North Country. This has been our long-term journey. Due to the seasonal nature of our data, I took a look at September of each of the year to give us a real idea of a trend line. So since 1990, we are up over that period. And that is contrary to a good number of upstate communities that aren't as lucky as the North Country to have that overall increase in the total number of jobs over the longer term. Take a look at, I'm seated in the southern tier of New York, and I know between us and central New York to a degree, and definitely Mohawk Valley, we are actually showing a downward trend over the longer term. So over the longer term, I am encouraged. Obviously, we want to see more jobs. The more opportunities out there, the more excitement we'll get to outsiders looking for potential careers in our community itself. You'll see our dive and uptick related to, again, to the egg scrambler COVID. Substantial decline. I don't believe the North Country was affected as deeply as far as percentage of loss of jobs, just because we are so tight as far as the essential nature of many of our jobs, that many of them had to stay online in order to have a safe environment within our community. But we were affected as it relates to travel and tourism largely. And then education had its issues, and healthcare also. But since then, since the low point, we have seen an increase, and we are maybe a little bit more muted as of late, but we are slowly inching up to our pre-pandemic employment levels. And that is our goal right now, is to get to the pre-pandemic and then build off of that. So this is a breakout of jobs by industry category. And as we talked about Fort Drum, and we know of the prisons, government is a big piece of our economy up here. So not only are the prisons and Fort Drum, the federal jobs in there, but we've got our SUNY systems are in there, any sort of BOCES are in there, local school districts are in there. So it's not just an office setting job. These are really important backbone industry jobs within our community. Following that, we see healthcare and social assistance is a tremendous asset to our community, and it's one industry that has quite a few residents, employs quite a few residents. After that, we'll get into our travel and tourism a bit, with retail trade, accommodation and food services, and arts, entertainment, and recreation can be tucked into that as a tourism. Those are typically the three broad categories that we think are really related to that tourism industry. And following that, we do see manufacturing. Manufacturing is still a very important industry up in the North Country, and it does pay an above average wage, and then construction's right behind it. So our goods producing, manufacturing, and construction will round out our top six there. I want to make one comment about the little gray dashes in there. So that really speaks to specialization or a higher concentration. So if we were to scale down the U.S. economy's industry segments to fit into our community here, that's where they would lie as far as the number of jobs. So if we see that our blue bar is well beyond that gray stripe, we have a larger concentration than we would see relative to the nation. So it's something that we see that we're not too surprised by a good number of them, government being one, retail and accommodation, food services right on the edge of that blue bar. So we're not too surprised to see those, knowing how important they are to our community. I think that's essentially the big talking points there. Now, looking forward, these, as they stand right now, are our expectations moving forward based on where we've been. These are projections that are updated on a regular basis. This particular set looks out about 10 years. So I think you won't be too surprised to see that those industry segments that we have a greatest concentration are the ones that are going to offer up the most opportunities. Government, healthcare, retail, accommodation. Administrative and support does move up into there. I think, again, that might be related to Fort Drum and the outside private group that services the Fort Drum itself. So that's why it would raise up a little bit above as far as what we saw as total numbers of jobs out there. I do want to talk briefly as far as what youth are chasing. Typically, won't be too surprising to many of you, we'll see a more youthful worker population in those tourism-related industry categories, in your retail, in your accommodation and food services, in your arts recreation. They're dipping their toe in the water, getting some experience. Those are ones that you don't need really a whole lot. You don't need a whole lot of education to get into it. It's just about getting there and being taught that by an individual within the career itself. So we see a lot of that. Other industry categories that show a little bit more, a higher number of youthful have been information as it relates to technology. So if we don't have that specific industry segment isn't too robust for us. So it's wherever technology touches an industry. So they're pretty much chasing after a business that isn't afraid to innovate, isn't afraid to fold in technology to improve service, where they think they can come and make a difference. So that's what we're seeing as far as the youth experience. I know in very broad terms, but that's where we're seeing the most traction. I think one more I do want to talk about. We talk about retail and accommodation and food services. Many are touching that in a different way. I think we talked on gig working. So if they can, again, incorporate technology and be able to touch that industry in a way that just seems a little bit more cutting edge to them. So delivering the orders, delivering the parcels. Those companies have been very receptive to meeting those workers where they want to be, letting them set their own schedule. So there's been more uptake within those categories of accommodation and food services, and then transportation and warehousing. Now, very quickly, as I said, we pour through data and try to bring out something that makes sense. So we take a look at the data, see trends, see information, try to bring it out there. A couple of data products we have helpful for planning as far as job seekers or any of those who want to seed something that looks like it will, provide fruit for the community. First, we took a look at our industry categories, and everyone asked us, okay, which industry segment is the most important? So that we'll get that generally speaking. So our crack at it was to just kind of look at employment and wage information and see, based on these requirements listed on here, which industries kind of float up in there. And we did that for all of our regions. We update this as we get new data. So every year or two, we'll update this significant industry. It doesn't mean they're important or the most valuable. These are just ones that hit these metrics in a meaningful way. So these are the broad categories that we just recently released for the North Country region. So we will see some agriculture in there. We will see our construction industry, food manufacturing specifically caught our eye. Professional and scientific is usually that R&D piece there. That's one that pays a very high amount as far as its average wage and has been showing some employment gains. We see that admin and support services, which does have a volume of jobs, and then we get into our education and we get into our healthcare, and then that tourism related at the bottom. So these aren't terribly surprising. Some of them may jump out, something that you haven't seen or haven't seen highlighted. Again, we go with the data on here. These are based on 3 or 4 specific matrix. That doesn't mean that these are all important, but these caught our eye as far as employment and wage information. And lastly here, so we look at industries broadly, but many people want to know about specific jobs. So we also took a look at occupations. So we're following the lead of the Federal Reserve, who noticed that there was a lot of a job polarization going on. People who wanted to go to college to get a job commensurate with that level of education, they focus on that and they go and they'll get to that typically a higher payday. And then many people who just need to get into the working world, maybe not education is not their pursuit, so they jump out there and jump right in. So we see a lot of people in the low skill and high skill, and then a hollowing out of that middle skill piece. So we wanted to raise up those middle skill jobs that don't require a bachelor's or higher, pay a decent wage, at least relative to the median in there, and we added on projected to grow over our long-term projection scenario. So we do have that report available, and we actually have a dashboard. We've been moving into a lot of data visualizations because that gets the point across a lot more quickly. And the automation as far as updating this is a lot easier. So this is another product out there available to the public here and help in guiding decisions. So that's essentially it. I think I probably run long because that's typically what I do. My contact information is on there. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, I don't really like that Christian Harris guy. He's kind of annoying. We have a guy in the field at Lake Placid, Konstantin Sakow. He started with us about 3 years ago, still learning the ropes, but has proven himself to be a valuable asset. Super nice guy, very good at getting into the data that you need, responds very well. So that's another resource for you in this community that you can take advantage of. And that is it for me. Thank you.
Okay, we have about 50 minutes, and like I said, I want all of you to be part of this. So I'm going to talk to the panel. I'm going to ask questions of you. If you have questions, Christian and Callie have made themselves available to be part of this too and answer questions. So if you have specific questions for them, ask those also. So if the panel could come up now, and I'll introduce you. And everybody hold your microphone like this so everybody can hear. Okay, I'm going to do this in order. So Svetlana Philipson is Technology Sector Project Lead for Adirondack Foundation. Carrie Persian is Biodiversity Research Manager for Ausable Freshwater Center. Davana Marks is Senior Director of Technical Operations and PMO, Thermo Fisher Scientific, and also owns the cabins at Chimney Mountain. Will Fortin is Lead Data Scientist for Hum.Works. And you all met Adam Boudreau, who is President of Kentile Excavating. So thank you all for being here. This is our panel, the jobs of the workers of the future. So the first question for all of you, and I would ask you to please tell us a little bit about what your job actually is and where you live in the park. So the first question, you're all smart, skilled people who likely had many opportunities, but you wanted to be here in the Adirondacks. What were the circumstances, support, and opportunity that allowed you to make that happen? You want to start?
Yeah, I can go first. So my name's Svetlana, as Tracy just said, and I live in Wilmington. I've been working for the Adirondack Foundation for about 2.5 months, where I'm actually leading a project. We're trying to build a tech and tech-adjacent workers ecosystem here. And prior to that, I was a senior director and head of the analytics department at a large digital marketing agency. And what made it possible for me to be here is COVID. Probably similar story to a lot of workers. I grew up here. I graduated from Lake Placid High School just over 20 years ago. So I'm called a boomerang. And I was splitting the year between here and Colorado for 3 years. And I was trying to figure out where do I want to settle permanently. So kept on going back and forth, looking at houses here and there, childcare, all of that stuff. And for me, this place became more feasible. I got my son into a daycare facility here. I was on 6 different waiting lists. Finally got him into childcare here. Since I grew up here, I had a strong family support, and quite honestly, it was also my seniority at my company. I think that's what I come across a lot of remote and hybrid workers. You almost need to get to a certain point where you are trusted enough, you're experienced enough, you have a certain level of notoriety within your company. Like I was managing a department, I had a lot of employees reporting to me across the world, but because I was a certain level, it was more feasible to be here versus if I just graduated college. It would have been extremely hard to make it to the level I was to do that. So I would say the availability of a community, childcare, and then just the level I was at with my job.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Ann Persian and I'm a fisheries biologist. I work as the Biodiversity Research Manager at Ausable Freshwater Center in Wilmington. It's a nonprofit focused on helping communities protect our lakes and streams. And I started out, I'm originally from Buffalo and fell in love with the park upon my first visit as a teenager. Just knew it was my home the second I crossed the blue line. I went to college at SUNY Plattsburgh and studied ecology and environmental science. I also studied expeditionary studies there, and so combined trying to get into the field and get hands-on experience through all of my classes and undergraduate research opportunities, as well as building that skill set to lead and plan research expeditions through the Expeditionary Studies program. And I think that made me a very competitive candidate for my first job as an entry-level seasonal position at Wildlife Conservation Society, working in both science and outdoor education. From there, you know, my skill set and my experience also afforded me the opportunity to take on other seasonal tech positions with Wildlife Conservation Society, and was lucky enough that they had a little bit of extra funding kicking around to keep me on year-round after a couple of years. So I started seasonally and then worked to year-round with them. I went and pursued a master's degree in fisheries and wildlife biology from SUNY ESF in Syracuse so that I could find a way to stay here in the park and work as a fisheries biologist, which helped lead me to my next position.
Hi, my name is Davana Marks. So I work for Thermo Fisher Scientific in the diagnostics division. I'm responsible for global technical operations, which basically means if there's a facility that is having trouble manufacturing or with supply chain issues, I go and try to solve the problem or help them solve the problem and deploy my team to do that. I transitioned into this position about 2 years ago, and the reason why I transitioned into this position is that I was the head of manufacturing operations in Cambridge, Massachusetts for a cell therapy facility, also within Thermo Fisher. And at the time, my husband and I had a conversation about a lifestyle change for our sons and ourselves. I was spending a lot of time at work. I worked all through COVID, so the hours that I was working, I missed my family a lot, but gained a lot of experience and gained a lot of trust within my company. So to your point, I don't think I could have moved into this position without the senior level experience and without proving my worth with the company. So at the time that I had the conversation with my husband, we said, where would we want to live? Adirondacks was first to come to mind. My husband and I both graduated from Clarkson University. I have a degree in bioprocess engineering and biomolecular science, and he was innovation and entrepreneurship. And so what was important for us to move here is, first of all, that I could find a remote position that wouldn't take away from the salary that I was currently making and maybe could, have an increase there. And the second one was that we could move our business here. So we immediately, when we graduated from college, we invested in real estate. And so it was important for us to be able to move our business here and have that opportunity, and for me to find a remote position. So key points to that were I needed to find a position, which I was able to do within my current company. Again, because of the reputation, there is many positions that are remote at a senior level, because once you move to a senior level, you are supporting multiple sites and you're not site specific. So that's in the manufacturing industry, there's anything from quality, regulation, operations, supply chain, finance, accounting, every position that you can think of that is global at a senior level. And also project management. So my team that reports into me are lower level in the organization, but they're project managers and they have technical expertise and they're proven, which is why we can move them into a remote position. So the other things that were really critical for us moving is that we had high-speed access to the internet, obviously working remotely, and that we could find a property that we could move our business to. And so when we started looking, we found a beautiful resort in Indian Lake, New York, which is where we currently live. We own cabins at Chimney Mountain. We had taken over from a couple that had bought it 40 years ago and learned a ton from them, but really brought it into utilize technology to upgrade the facilities, upgrade the way that we marketed, and brought on vacationers here. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is we identified that property also had fiber optic cable to it, which was very, very important for us. We have generators for power outages, and we also have Starlink, which makes it possible when we do have outages for the internet, or when I'm traveling to go fly out to a facility, I have to travel far distances and you lose network, but I have to be on work calls. So I have a Starlink that I carry with me, and it's an initial investment, but then you pay as you go, and it's worked wonderfully. Our two boys are in a fantastic school district in Indian Lake, New York, and we love it so far. So those are the key things. Thank you.
Hey, and I'm Will Fortin. I work at a place called Hum, and I write code essentially most of the time to create AI models and produce AI applications for content-rich organizations, largely publishers. Most of our R&D work is with academic publishers, because if the model can understand how academics speak, common language is way easier. But I think it's helpful to go back a little bit to understand why I'm here and why I want to talk with you guys and get your questions, feedback, and help grow the tech community through initiatives like Svetlana runs. My partner and I moved up here in 2019, which, what a time to buy a house. And I also was supported by my organization. I was at Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, huge Earth science campus down on the Hudson River, so it's not actually in Manhattan with the main part of campus. And my division head was excellent to me. And he said, hey, you want to move up there? That's the dream, right? To get to go live in the woods and do research. And the head of the institution was against remote work in 2019. But we all knew Sean was retiring, so Dave said, hey, why don't we just shelter you? You can move up there, and then when Sean retires, it'll be fine. You'll just be kind of grandfathered in. And so we moved up here and ended up commuting down to New York City Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. out the door so we could have our work day, and then we came back Thursday night. And we did that until COVID hit. At COVID time, everybody went remote. Life became a lot easier. But as a seagoing academic, getting people from around the world to join on a boat, no, that's not going to happen. I ended up having a funding gap because of that. One of my friends was starting a company and said, hey, why don't you come write some code? Your specialty is writing code to get nuance out of huge data sets. And I enjoyed it so much, I ended up not going back to the academic position. And this has let me stay at home, and along the way, we went from not even Starlink, from the geostationary satellites that have a big lag, to the fiber optic came in, and man, was that nice. My company was actually asking, hey, can we incentivize them to turn this on? Because they knew they were laying fiber. So that opened a lot of doors for us. And so I want to be here at this panel and through A2I later, representing what I think some digital workers can be. Because right now we talk about the privilege of being supported to do this, but with the advent of the AI age and the influencer and other stuff like that, there are going to be plenty of opportunities for organizations of one or two self-employed people who are contractors who can produce a product for some niche field, and if they can have a community that supports their professional development and the infrastructure needed to make it work, man, a distributed technology area like the Adirondacks could work for that sort of future. So that's sort of how I got here and what I do and what I think we should be thinking about when we think about some of these tech jobs, not just for senior people who have support and are lucky, but people who are starting off and have some fire and want to build an app or some sort of product. Yeah, I live in Johnsburg, so closer to you down there. So it's about an hour and a half from here. So just south of Gore Mountain, if you don't know Johnsburg, because all we have is a post office.
This is quite an accomplished group. My story is a little simpler. Grew up in Tupper Lake, went to high school here, went away to college down in SUNY Geneseo. Honestly, thought about not coming back and going down to New York City with everyone else that I graduated with down there, but fortunately made the decision to come back, work for a company that was owned at the time by my uncle, originally started by my grandfather, and fell in love with the area a second time, married a local girl, had 2 beautiful daughters, and I'm thankful to be a part of this conversation as someone that has always basically lived and worked in the park and have seen kind of the ebbs and flows. And I'm really excited to hear from this group who have chosen to make this their home as well.
Okay, so some more education, Starlink, companies that support you, the best boss in the world, and that's all you need. So is there anything out here that you guys can add to this? What do the Adirondacks need to make this possible or just easier for others to follow in their footsteps? And we do know the housing problem is out there and people are working hard on that. So you can mention it, but let's not dwell on it. Anybody? Well, I think Anna is out there with the microphone. Does anybody have anything to add?
Hi, I'm just nodding vigorously. I'm a data scientist that moved up here, bought a motel, so very similar. I guess the experience of once you spend 10, 15 years in that space, that data space, you have opportunity for the hybrid. So I'm just nodding vigorously to that situation where many firms support that once you get to a certain level. I think new folks coming out of college need to be in that space, in work, physically at an office in order to gain those skills and become productive. But after 10 or 15 years, there's So if we could, focus on, promoting and attracting those folks somehow, I think that's going to be an explosion. So.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think one thing we should be thinking about is how we facilitate and make that happen. Communities of people, so people don't feel isolated professionally in addition to socially. And making it known that, hey, you can do this up here. You have support and infrastructure to do it. So even just talking about it, I think helps, even amongst ourselves.
Well, one more, and then we'll.
I've got feelings about that as well, because I went through college, then to a PhD, postdoc, then to a job, and you feel those lost years in terms of income generation and times you can invest for retirement and all that. And like, I've got a PhD, I think it's a dumb idea for most people. I would never, right? And I think there's going to be a split, right? Some jobs will require college and say, hey, you got a rubber stamp, get this degree, whatever. But there are going to be more positions, whether it's through some sort of self-promote or self-marketing influencer or data science, AI jobs, where in order to get the first job is going to be really hard. And so you do some projects, you create an app, you create something to prove that you've got those skills. And then jobs after that start to fall in line. And I think for even jobs in the AI space, which is a nerdy field, college degrees aren't going to be required. You'll be able to just hammer out a few projects, show that to potential employers if you want to go from self-employed to somewhere else and do it. So I think there's going to be a split. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for the non-college going, but still in technology fields. That's going to bloom, I think.
Adam, do you want to continue on that? You've done a great job of providing great careers.
No, I see it both ways. I did go to a 4-year school. I also had a blast, probably too much fun, honestly. But what's great is that experience. If you get in with the right firm, regardless of the industry, and really embrace it and learn from the people that you're working with, the sky's the limit regardless. And I wouldn't look at those years as wasted years, because I got a lot of culture. I got out of the area. I met some of my best friends down there. But when it came to on-the-job like business training, I learned that the hard way through mistakes. But what's really interesting is these 19-year-olds that come to work for us are getting not just work training, but real life lessons. Like when they go to buy a truck, we're like, well, what's the interest rate? What's your term? And then we break it down for them. This is probably a mistake. You don't need an $80,000 diesel pickup at a 7% interest rate. Let me explain to you what it was like when I bought my first truck and things that could be favorable. We also push guys to do home ownership, and we go through with them the mistakes we made and the successes that we had, and how to really work the system a little bit in some cases. In the blue-collar world, it's kind of great because you know how to do everything around your own house. It's terrible when your wife figures that out.
I have one other thing to add. So we have 2 boys, and when we talk about education, there's a couple of things to consider. First, there's a lot of ability to self-educate today, which I think is really important. I went to Clarkson and left with $125,000 in student debt. That even though I enjoyed my time very much, I had good experiences, and it opened some doors for a job that was a lot, and still working to pay that off. So when I talk to my kids about education, we were pushing them to self-educate, but also go into the trades as well. And then the second piece is, if they are going to go to a college, we're promoting like Paul Smith's and obviously Clarkson as well. But part of that is because we see the transition to hands-on experiential education. recently reading articles for Paul Smith where, you know, internships and the hands-on and going out to the community and integrating is going to be so much more valuable than just your standard education, go to class, party, and then exit and figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So I would say, you know, education being a big industry here, you know, you don't want that to collapse, but if you can transition into more experiential and have it be more meaningful, I think that would go a long way.
So just one other thing to add to what everyone said, completely agree with everything that the rest of the panelists said. Another thing to consider about education here and the job market, like taking the Adirondacks, I grew up here, went through the school system here. A lot of employment around here is about who you know, and that is a big thing to consider. Like what Adam was saying, this was part of the like side panel, and that sometimes like younger guys may not be able to get in somewhere, or sometimes there's like the older guys who like don't want to share their work, right? But it's about who you know. Like I interned at Trudeau Institute. I was in high school, right? And I could have probably like gone down that track more easily and like not gotten as an expensive education. But here you can get into a job by knowing someone who will train you up. So maybe education is not as relevant to certain positions. In others it is. It very much varies to the industry. I lived in San Francisco for many years. A lot of startups, even Google and Silicon Valley companies, they actually don't care if you have a degree. They want you to code. And a lot of kids now, they start coding at like the age of 5. So it really varies, but also to consider if you're going to stay in the Adirondacks, like considering that, all right, how important is the education and where are you going to work and who do you know, what kind of experience can you get?
Let's talk about the sciences for a minute, and Carrie. The sciences are an interesting and promising career opportunity here in the Adirondacks. What potential do you see for new jobs in this area over the next 5 years?
Sure, thanks. So I think there is a great potential for growth, and your report shared that for the science and technical job market in the next 10 years. And in the next 5 years, I think, you know, I'm an ecologist and I work for a nonprofit, and there are several nonprofits working throughout the region to help protect the Adirondacks. And there's the state through APA and DEC and our other state agencies that have, you know, not tons of job openings every year. There's a few every year. There's certainly so many entry-level positions and a lot of seasonal positions. And there are fewer, although, you know, as I've watched the mid-level positions grow over the last few years, and I see more potential for growth with that. There's, you know, and then there's all these science adjacent fields that I think are growing, and it's all around, you know, sustainable recreation for the park, and thinking about trail building and trail maintenance, the mountain biking. You know, there's all sorts of new markets that are coming up around that sort of recreation, but mixed with the lessons we've learned through the science that we've done. In that same vein, you know, there's a lot of seasonal employment right now, and certainly some growth for mid-level positions amongst invasive species work. There's several organizations that are doing that, and it's invasive species research, education and outreach to the community, as well as mitigation for those invasive species. So trying to keep this place the reason that we all came here and love this place, to keep it the way it is. I think that's the work that we're doing and the work that will continue to take place.
And there's money coming in for that too.
Yeah, and so there's funding, you know, through the State Environmental Bond Act. There's federal money through the infrastructure bill that are helping to grow these positions, and that federal money and state money will enhance growth, and private donations and things will keep that going, but the creation of new jobs will be supported by that funding as long as it keeps flowing.
And while you have the microphone, Carrie was also president of recruitment of student and early career professionals for the American Fisheries Society. Can you talk a little bit about what those early career and young people are thinking.
Sure, yeah. So that's my professional society, is the American Fisheries Society, and I've helped, it's helped my own career grow by having this network of other fisheries scientists across the United States. That's my community, and I was a president of the student and early career professionals for the whole nation, and learning about, connecting with universities and especially those early career researchers and early career professionals that are within the first 7 years after graduating is the cutoff that we say. But there's a major loss during that time period if these early career professionals are not supported, either by their organization or by their community or institutionally. They're lost. They skip careers or they skip town, and I think that's one of the lessons I'm thinking about for this area is finding ways to support folks in their early career stage. I've just read an article that the country of Portugal is facing major loss of their young people, and they've got a bill right now that's looking at reduced income taxes for the first 10 years after entering the job market.
Yep.
So I'm less in the environmental science side and more in the bioprocessing and biologics side, but there's this transformation of health that is predictive and functional, so it's proactive, and it's tied to the environment. So I see that there's a huge opportunity in a community that is, the environment is perfect for healing, but also proactively preventing disease in a lot of ways. And how can we leverage that here, right? So I'm in diagnostics right now, so we constantly analyze the data biomarkers that show what could lead to disease and how to prevent it. And going out in the wilderness and being stress-free is a big part of that. So I mean, healing centers, healing environment is something I think from a science perspective, it might not be a right now industry, but the industry of the future, my goodness, yeah, definitely.
This is a total trend. I was thinking the talking points, things that I wanted to bring up here in that exact vein, injecting some tech jobs, whether it's an AI space or other traditional type of things, into the stuff that we've been shown we already have. And healthcare is one of those, environment is another one of those. And one thing I think we have talked about a little bit at the high level, but encouraging through our educational systems entrepreneurship, because there are going to be a ton of opportunities, whether it's things like we were just speaking of, to do those things, and for the early career people to create a product, to make a name for themselves, to get a next job or build a company from what they first do. That's where the creativity and the, hey, you're not in school to get in a line to get a job. You're in school to come up with an idea and create something, open a door for yourself. That, I think, is a really good way to get people who are here to stay here. And building that community could attract people from outside to join us. So just keep snowballing this train as we're coming down the line.
And they're all connected, too.
Yeah.
I don't think we realize like data connects to sciences, connects to the environment. It's all.
Continuing on the connections, we talked a little bit about the challenges of not having support networks or being able to get together with others who are doing work like you do. What kinds of networks, spaces can the Adirondacks build to make this easier and keep people like you around?
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge because typically in university towns where a lot of academics and startups tend to come from, they have meetups. And I've spoken at plenty of these meetups in a lot of different places where you go and you say, hey, there's this group of data science people and engineers who get together to talk about this, that, the other thing. That's really hard for us when, it's an hour and a half from here to home. You can't just do that after work on a Thursday and then go get a beer with these people. But making that important and committing time, especially for people of our age, to support younger people, connect to this, show that this network exists is really, really important. And I think I'll just use this as a plug to talk about A2I if Svetlana wants to add anything.
Thanks. I appreciate the plug-in. I mentioned I work for the Adirondack Foundation, and I'm leading one of their projects. It's a tech ecosystem project. So essentially, it's called the Adirondack Innovation Initiative, and what we're trying to do is build a tech ecosystem in the greater Adirondacks. Tech ecosystem can mean so many different things, and there's many, many examples across the country, and we're trying to lean into what works here. And our whole goal of the tech ecosystem is that we want to allow more people to live here full-time with a good job that supports a sustainable lifestyle. And we think that tech and tech-adjacent jobs, tech-adjacent can mean so many things. Consulting, project management, sales, marketing, graphic design. There's so many tech-adjacent jobs. It's not just your coders, your data scientists, your engineers, even your lab technicians. And a big piece that we're starting with that is connecting all the people that are already here. There are a good amount of, I estimate about, through the help of Christian, I've estimated about 1,000 remote and hybrid workers in the tech and tech-adjacent space who are here. They're fairly disjointed. They probably don't know about each other, and so we're starting with forming a network of us. Out of that network, I see mentor and mentee programs coming out, getting ourselves in the classroom, getting more involvement with the college and K through 12 students, things like family coding night for some of our middle schoolers. Many, many things that can come out of it, and if we can start to build a network, I can see it growing and more people wanting to be here because there are resources. The Adirondacks is not for anyone. You need to have some grit to be here. You need to know how to make things work, but there's many people who do want to be here, and if there's people like them who are already here and sharing their stories or just sharing a beer, like Will mentioned, here for professional purposes, but social. It's really nice. So that's kind of the purpose of our network. And just to go back to what Tracy was saying, in that what are some of the challenges? As I mentioned, I grew up here. I know a lot of people here. I've been coming back ever since I went off to college. I've been coming back very often. My mother still lives here. And it's still hard. When I first came back here, it's still hard to find like-minded people I connect with, people I want to spend time with. We're on different schedules, have kids, have different jobs with different schedules. And if you consider some of the larger areas like New York, San Francisco, even Boulder and Austin, there's a lot of transplants there. And while we have them here, we're more disconnected, and the Adirondacks can be hard to break into social circles. Most of the time people have friends they know, or they're getting together for recreational reasons, like you mountain bike or you run, you swim, you kayak. But the professional reasons can be a little tougher, and it can be hard to meet people. Like you can meet people through if you both have a dog or a kid or something like-minded, but the professional aspect can be missing, and I think there's really great opportunity for that. And I think that is one of the challenges. I think another challenge, and this maybe me personally, I have a hard time finding things to do in the winter. I ski, I cross country, I snowshoe, I do all the things, but if I want to do an indoor activity, I find that there's limited spaces of getting together with people in the winter, even if it's kind of like a museum or like, yeah, we have coffee shops, but again, it's not a place you'll like naturally meet people. So I think there are certain aspects of our environment that make it a little bit more difficult that we could use more of. Yeah, I think that's great. Actually, Maine, I've been talking to a lot of rural communities with this project. Maine is doing exactly that. There's a huge grant that the Maine libraries got, and they're actually making themselves more into co-working spaces and allowing those opportunities, and more Wi-Fi that extends to outdoor spaces so people can gather outdoor. And yeah, I think libraries are a great opportunity. I think there's a lot around communication, because we still think you go to the library, like, be quiet, don't talk. And so there's a lot of more awareness we can raise around that. But yeah, that's a great idea.
I would encourage if anybody here is in their local government or library to consider the hours as well, not just the spaces. There are some great libraries. I love working in libraries and bars, to be honest, any place where people are. But like our library is not open most of the time. Like half of the days it doesn't open till noon. Mondays, Tuesdays, I don't think it's open at all. Certainly in, you know, the Saranac Lakes and Lake Placids, those libraries have full hours. But for people in a lot of the other towns, we do struggle with that. And so I would encourage anybody who has a voice in spaces like that to speak up for those having more hours, particularly in the business times.
Everybody has a voice. The library's for everybody.
Yeah.
Thursday nights or every other Thursday.
I'll keep this short, but one of the things in the trades, especially if people are coming immediately out of high school, the assumption is that they're not really interested in higher education, but traditional higher education. I love our local library, and one of the things that we encourage any of our guys is develop your reading, writing, and communication skills. If you read widely, and if you can communicate, whether in person or via an email, what you plan to do for your customer, you will oftentimes get that project even if you're priced 5 or 8 or 10% higher, because you can explain that well. So libraries are a huge part of my life.
Just keep that microphone for a second. We watched the beautiful video of Adam and his team, but let's talk a little bit about what we are doing for our employees to help them build their careers and want to stay where they are. Can you talk a little more about that? Some of the things you think about?
Yep, certainly. The video made me a little emotional, so I want to thank Tim and Eric and everyone at the Adirondack Explorer and the foundation. It was really well done. You took the best parts of what we said. But one of the things I think that has gotten lost in the American economy is you should not focus on profits, especially considered a lot of publicly traded companies. Their onus is always every quarter to produce cash for their shareholders. You should be just as loyal to the people that work for you. They should be one of the primary beneficiaries of what you're doing. So if you focus on the people and not the profits will show up, because those people care about you, and it turns into a relationship, and they care about the company. So we realized pretty early on that we had to do that. And then once we did, we kind of started building this team, this family. We're all friends, and there's something to be said for, 5:45 in the morning, there's 15 to 20 guys sitting around, getting ready for the day. We start our day with a meeting, and everyone's in a good mood. Everyone's joking. Everyone's making plans for the weekend. But then when it's time to go to work, we go to work and we get things done. So number one, focus on the people, not the profits. Number two, really our role in the regional economy is to bring money to Tupper Lake. We thankfully get to work for a lot of second home owners. So we feel that our role is really to bring money from the tri-state area and the rest of the country and bring it into our local economy, disperse it to the men and women that work for us, disperse it to the school, charity organizations, sports teams, kids teams. And if you have that mentality, everything else kind of falls into place.
And wait one sec. You also talked a little bit about the responsibility that you give to your workers.
Yeah, our work is very serious. It's dangerous, And from a very young age, when these guys come to work for us, some of these guys are 18 or 19, they realize that you have to be on your game, and we're going to give you a series of heavy responsibilities, and we're going to tax you physically and mentally. But how rewarding is that? And those guys are better for it day in and day out, week in and week out. And we hope that by the time we're done with them, whether they choose to make a career with us and become a foreman, buy a house, raise a family, and put their kids in the school district, or whether they go out into the wider workforce, we feel that we prepare them to go to work anywhere and that they'll be top tier. And you just feel good. I mean, you can enjoy a beer if you've put in 40 hard hours of work. And we like that old school work ethic, and our guys do too. And the guys that enjoy it stick around. The guys that don't, very quickly realize that they're not going to fit in with our company. But we love it.
Savannah, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just, first of all, I'm so impressed with Adam and what he's been able to do, and that him and his team had pinpointed focusing on the people. When we came to Indian Lake and the Adirondack area and started our business, we were told it's going to be so hard to find workers. And I will tell you, it has not been. We have had people that come to us and ask for work. And right now we employ part-time, but we're trying to move to a full-time role that would be a salaried position with benefits and have some educational components around marketing and things they can do in the off-season to help. But I'm extremely educated in leadership because of the corporation that I've been in, because of the education that I've had. And Adam, I don't know how you got that way, maybe really good mentors, but I think there's an opportunity for other new business owners that maybe haven't had the experience on how to treat people and why it's so important, how to communicate, how to have that leadership presence. And if they do that, it's not hard to find workers, and it's not hard for them to stay, and then they refer their kids to you because they want them to be in that positive environment and learn from your experiences as well. So there's a huge opportunity there, and there's so much negativity around workers not being available. I can tell you that's not the truth from our experience. So
Great. Yes.
Thank you. Excuse me. So I just wanted to first of all tell you where Adam got his leadership opportunity. I believe it had something to do with a frat at Geneseo, and there are more stories there if you want to speak to him. I was just struck. I am kind of tail end of the boomer generation. I was in education, but I did my research for my master's degree in social history. And I was really struck listening to all of you. You're describing a pre-modern civic and employment organization where you have a lot of people that are, you're not formally trained, you have not come through a 4-year institution, you are not necessarily going big corporate, you're finding your own way, and especially you have a connection to your workers. And as a business owner, you're helping them learn how to navigate through life. And I just think this is really interesting because there's kind of a lot of the wisdom of the past, and it's ironically very wrapped up in high tech. And so just wanted to make that point. Maybe it's something we can all think about, and that model of investing in people is really, I think, very powerful. So thank you.
It's a great point. I totally agree. And I think that we are particularly in a better spot to use that sort of model because of the dispersed nature of the park, because it's bigger than New Jersey and has 120,000 people. We can't be a suburb. We don't want to be a suburb.
Peter, did you have?
Thank you. I have a couple questions for the panel, and all of your stories were very fascinating. In living in the park for many years, and why I don't look like it now, I was once a young person who chose to move to the park in the 1980s. And I've watched a lot of people from that time period who did certain things and made certain choices and able to live here, and others that wanted to pursue other things and moved away. And a couple of you on both ends of the panel have clearly strong family roots and community roots that brought you back to the park. Others of you found your way here through various means. It often seems like sort of a chicken and egg situation with employment in the park and who wants to live in the park. My sense is, and as I've been watching this over the years, is that there are fewer people that actually want to live in the park, given the social realities of the park, given some of the economic realities, given the schools, given, you know, a gazillion things that you can tick off with where American life is in the 2020s. It's really, I don't know how much of living in rural America is for everybody these days. I've lived in Blue Mountain Lake for many years, and I have friends who come many times a year, and they would never live there, as much as they enjoy coming there. So I wonder, it always seems that finding people who have the desire to be here and them figuring out a way to be here is going to be sort of one of our greatest economic recruitment strategies. And it's, all the natural beauty and the forest preserve and all the things about just that make Adirondack life, incredibly exciting and a high quality of life for people that really want to be here, or that people have strong family connections here. But, each of you had a different story and made a bunch of choices that led you to be here. I don't know how widely replicable it is. I mean, the mentoring that you guys are doing, clearly, you're doing a lot like that, and what the Adirondack Foundation is doing. But it seems that it starts with people who really want to be here, and that's the big thing, and that's a relatively small part of the population.
So I think there's at least two answers to that. I'm sure people will have more, but infrastructure and climate are going to affect whether people want to live here. I think you'd be surprised at the number of people who want to get away from suburbs and cities, first of all. And once the infrastructure is there to make it, my friends. So I think you'd be surprised once the infrastructure is in place, once they know, hey, I have a house with a well and a backup generator and a backup internet, so my toilet will flush when the power goes out and I can continue on my work calls. Once that infrastructure is there and people know it's possible and the social networks are there, that's what we're here trying to build, then it becomes more attractive to people who might be on the fence. And second, we're going to end up, whether we like it or not, with more people moving here, because all the climate models are suggesting that this part of the country is going to be a little less affected than so many others. And so people are going to leave the Floridas and the Phoenixes to come to New England and upstate New York. So we're going to get an influx of people avoiding continual natural disasters. And if we can show that we have the infrastructure and the social infrastructure to support it, it's going to be a no-brainer for people to come here versus going to Minnesota or whatever.
The one thing I would say is that when people ask me where I live and I tell them the story, they're like, oh my God, I've always wanted to do that. How did you figure that out? And it's like, well, here's how I did it. And they're like, oh, I think that we could do that too. Like, I hear that all the time, especially in the corporate world where people are just like grinding and sitting in traffic in the cities, that they want to do it, but they've never had a roadmap and they've never been around somebody that's done it. And it's incredible how when people will say, where do you live? I'm like, oh, Adirondack, New York, 2 hours north of Albany, almost Canada, in the middle of nowhere. And they're like, what? How? I would love to do that. So I think that there is more people out there. They just don't have the roadmap or somebody in their life that's done it. And we have guests. We have about 3,000 people that come through our facility every year for vacationing. And there's a ton of middle-aged, end-of-career people that are like, I've always wanted to start a business in a small town in the mountains. How can we do this? And we get that question all the time.
And I'm not sure of the statistics on it, on the people leaving the park, but I know firsthand that we seem to be developing more undeveloped properties in the last few years. And granted, some of those people, some right in Blue Mountain Lake, as you know, some of those people might be at the tail end of their career, so they're not necessarily coming up here to buy a business, although they do sometimes, and we know a bunch of people have done that as well. But they are building a brand new home that then is going to require upkeep. They're going to require people to service their generators, plumbing, electricians. Obviously, we build the house. I think, and the climate haven, I think it's already starting. I mean, as three of you can kind of attest to, not the climate haven part, but coming in. And I think it's going to progress. It's how, this is going to sound strange, but you want the right sort of people too. Like, you want the people that are comfortable living in a small town and being snowed in a little bit and enjoying that experience. And you don't want the people that love the strip malls and Chipotle on every corner, because you're not going to get that here. So hopefully they come with their eyes wide open and recognize that it's a different existence, but a better one.
Okay, we're pretty much out of time, but maybe one more.
Oh, I had a question for you guys. I'm kind of in that age bracket that you were talking about there. One of the few young people in this room. I'm kind of on the periphery of like past that 7-year period of having a job in my field with my degree. And for the past several years, I've been forced to have to work in Vermont. A lot of what I'm hearing, I love what I'm hearing. It's cool to hear you guys' stories. I was just curious, it seems like a lot of the positions you're talking about are like entry-level job, 18 years old, getting in the construction field, or like senior level operating, remote, tech adjacent. Do you have any thoughts on the future of like your more traditional brick and mortar professional jobs that might be possible within the park? Just because as a young person in that plight, I'd like to not have to work in Vermont and maybe support a little bit more of the local communities, and just curious about your thoughts on that.
We might need you, Christian.
I have some ideas too. Maybe to
sorry.
start. I don't know if brick and mortar you mean. There are tons of places I think in the park, and maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm in Indian Lake, and we're working to build up our downtown community. But if you have interesting ideas for businesses and experiences, especially indoors, that will be creative and leverage the technology and leverage social gatherings, I think there's tremendous opportunity for that in a ton of places in the park.
I do have to plug my organization. I mean, we're a free service. You'll get fairly intensive service. So if you were to stop at one of the career centers, if they, I think we're populated pretty well, as well as we can be in the North Country. I think that's a good resource to take advantage of on the front end, just to see, basically to get your information in there so that they can know who you are and what you're looking for. Then they'll showcase basically what they have as far as offerings go. So I think it's a good starting point. It may not be, we're not going to walk you as intimately as probably you would like, all of us would like, but I think that is a good starting point. So I can definitely, if I can get your contact information at the end, I can definitely hook you up.
I like your idea. My partner, she is the manager of a
Check out. Yeah, also check out resource from Anka. There's organizations here who specifically focus on training entrepreneurship, connecting you with funding, pairing you with mentor, allowing you to go through like a course. So there's like actual projects organizations that are doing this free of charge.
Well, we really are out of time, but I'm going to let you go because everyone's still sitting. The symposium, yeah. Yeah, when is it? The 12th.
12th.
Yeah. Great, great, thank you. Go ahead.
If I could use that to say thank you to the Explorer and the Foundation for stuff like this, because I think having people up here who are encouraging of their younger employees, encouraging of their environments that they're working in, comes from the leadership of the Explorer and the Foundation to get us up here and to have conversations where we're saying things like, yes, we are privileged and we want to have that growth for the next people who will come, finding the people who are going to fit in and make the communities better is the right thing to have at the front of our minds. And so thank you to you guys for putting it on, and thank you for the comment of doing this, and we'll do our best when we have mentors and mentees to be aware of that and to keep that at the front of our minds too.
Yeah, can I say one last thing? So my background is I came from zero, nothing, poverty in a very rural area. And one of the reasons why I wanted to come here in a small town, to be part of a small town, is because I was so grateful for where I've been able to get. And I want to give back. And I want to build other people up. So to come into an environment that maybe has a little bit higher of a poverty population, that's not scary to me. That's actually something where I want to be, because I want to help build it up. And I think there's other people out there. So if we can continue to build mentorship in that community, I think it will go a long way, and people have the energy for it once they're up here.
Okay, this is really the last one.
Going along with what you're saying too, also coming from a very low income background. I mean, legitimately started out with nothing. And I mean nothing. I had $500 to my name when I graduated college. One of the difficult things in small communities that have flirted with the poverty line is that they're so busy scratching out a living themselves and being kind of exclusive. You know, I don't know if you ever read the book The Status Game, but it's like, it's amazing how it lays it out. They are naturally a little bit worried about outsiders, but if we can build the wealth of these communities, build the education, not necessarily higher education, but education where these young people get to spend time with successful business owners or people in their community, I think we can get away from that that feeling. Because I know inside the park, it can feel extremely, if you're an outsider, you can feel extremely alone. So hopefully, as we build up these communities, that'll ease a little bit, and people have a little bit more spare time and resources to not be so worried about just trying to survive the winter themselves. They'll be kinder to others.
Thank you so much to this really fantastic panel. I think that time went really fast. I hope everybody felt that. So thank you so much. And thank you all for being here and for participating the way you did. That was, I think we have a lot of stuff to think about and build on. And I really appreciate everyone being here. So thank you.